Welcome back, subscribers. This video is just it's a personal story about my family and what we went through and how the Lima Peru declarations and the GATT, which is the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, and some of these trade agreements that came out from like 1947 in through the 60s. Nixon opening the doors, like Nixon had something to do with opening the doors to China, and be like, no. Be like, it's all these agreements behind the scenes, and then he's just the spokesman, he's the president. Be like, okay, here's the rules over here in the UN. You need to make it happen and then sell it to your people. All right, you're the president, figure it out. All right. And whenever that was done, it opened the doors for free trade and things to happen, and commerce and business to open up in new emerging markets, which is lower prices on manufacturing. So labor was very cheap, land was very cheap, and shipping. All these things were being established behind the scenes. International shipping and trade, steamers, the regulations on shipping container sizes, the container ships, all of this. Like none of that stuff was around, pre-World War II. They didn't have any of that shit. So after the war and all the dust clears, they're like, okay, let's reestablish. We have the territories already drawn up. You own this. This is our territory. Russia, you stay over there. We're going to be over here. And we're going to reestablish world trade and clean things up. You can have that shit. We'll have this stuff. That's fine. And what they do is they do these declarations. And then once the declarations are done, they go through the UN. The UN then gives a marching order to all the presidents of these countries and says, okay, this is the agreements, and this is what we're going to be doing in the future. However you decide to do your policies locally, that's your business. They're your people. We don't care what you do. So just figure it out. And the United States has a really cool system because we've got a turnover every 4 years of the president. So it's like one president can kind of push things a little harder. If one president doesn't get what needs to be done, they'll get another one that comes in there that, we'll sell this guy and he'll do X, Y, Z and so on and so on. And, and then stuff happens. And before you know it, there's nobody really to point the finger at. And you're living in this, I wouldn't say it's dystopian 1984. I think that's not. I think that's a very dark perspective. But you're living in an environment that has changed relative to all of these administrative changes that have happened, and they're just continue to keep slipping in all this crap behind the scenes, and everybody's like, where did this come from? Why did you put this, slip this into this bill? Da, 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 da. Well, it's directly related to the rules and things that are related behind these agreements, these international agreements, that the United States, because it is a world power and a world trade power, is responsible for following through, because we trade with other people. So it's not like there's we're basically have a moat, and now we're building the wall across Mexico, but we still need to be able to have goods be able to be shipped back and forth and into the United States. So it's a trade mechanism that has been used time and time again. It's a proven method that as civilizations rise, they fall. And there needs to be a mechanism behind the scenes that the blame game is never at any one single person, right? You could go blame Nixon for XYZ and why the jobs got pushed overseas and so on and so on. But it's just like when I asked ChatGPT, did the Lima Peru agreement directly cause United States manufacturing to push overseas into Asia? And it said, well, no. What did it say? I'll just read it. I think I've got it. Yeah. It says no, the agreement didn't directly force American jobs to Asia. You're probably referring to the Lima Peru Declaration and Plan of Action on Industrial Development and Cooperation, adopted by the UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organization, meeting in Lima, Peru in March of 1975. Its goal was to increase industrial production in developing countries to 25% of global manufacturing by the year 2000. Okay, so what happens right after the year 2000? You get 2001, right? And you get 2001, you've got the destruction of the World Trade Centers, which again is a big symbolic, whatever ritual event, whether if you believe that it happened because it was by chance that they decided to choose these buildings. But what do the buildings represent? It is the destruction of World Trade Centers, the World Trade Center, and World Financial uh, ground zero again is New York. New York is the financial capital of the world. So why don't we destroy it on the stage? And uh what if it's coincidental? I don't think it is. I think that uh it's there's plenty that leads that being conspiratorial. Like there was a lot of hands in the cookie jar for sure. And but it's very symbolic because if you go back and look at the documentation, it's basically saying like, hey, we're changing this world order, some new world order, like it's like, what George W. Sr. or George Herbert Walker had said, that we're entering this new world order, you know. It's not some 80s new wave band. It's like we're talking like like he's changing it, like he's the one that's initiating it. I'm like, dude, by the time he said that, all the shit was already going on. Like it's like he didn't have anything to do with it. He's just showing up and be like, "Okay, sir, yeah, we'll do it. I'll take care of it. I'll make sure that my American people they follow along with what I tell them to do." That's all the president does. That's it. So they have their marching orders from these higher ups through all the International Monetary Fund, the UN, and so on and so on. And that's what runs the planet. And if you don't have those things in place, the United States, we do not get our money is not from the United States. It comes from Europe, the International Monetary Fund, the International Bank of Settlements. That's how it all works. So back to my personal story. So father was in Vietnam, radar technician. He was in Vietnam for like maybe 2 months. He was basically stationed in Okinawa and for most of the time and went over there just for a couple of months. And didn't see any action. He was stationed in Da Nang, uh, pretty safe territory. He said he could watch the war, in the valley at night, that they would, see stuff get lit up and stuff underneath them. But he said it was he didn't have direct contact with anything. So he didn't come out with like a lot of the PTSD and things that came out of the Vietnam guys that were in there, like in the bush. But anyway, he was educated in electronics and technical, but he never went into that as a job in the future when he got out of the military. And he didn't get drafted. He actually enlisted. My father was in college, and he, for what the hell of a reason, he got really good grades in school. He was a straight A student, and he decided to enlist. And for he just thought it would be a good idea to enlist. And he knew that if he enlisted, he could choose whatever he wanted to do. So instead of like, he knew he was going to be getting out of college, in a year. And the conflict was like, he was a freshman in high school or a freshman in college whenever Kennedy was shot. So he graduated high school in like 60, like whatever, 62, 63, something like that. And it was in college, like freshman year, whenever Kennedy was shot, and just knew that the probability of him going in was pretty high and guys were getting drafted around him. So he's like, oh, screw it. I'll just enlist. And when you enlist, you get to choose what you do, and you're just not thrown on the front lines and just, you're not going to be a bullet sponge. So he thought that was kind of a safer way of like, you know, getting through it. And so he gets out and he ends up, I'm pretty sure that my father was tested. Our family we've got a bloodline in our family that, it's a rare blood typing that, I found out through some of my studies that there's, high interest in negative blood typing and, the negative blood types, in particular. And they were doing some like psychological testing. This kind of goes into that kind of MK Ultra stuff, the woo stuff that's kind of strange, where they have more psychic abilities, and there's all kinds of stuff that's interrelated to negative RH bloodlines because it's not normal human blood. And from what I understand, that when the military, if you enlist the military and they take your blood, that you're basically open seasoned, and they would test these guys but test them in laboratory settings. Now, he didn't have any memory of any of this. From what I understand, is like they have some way to wipe memories and kind of screw them up really bad. And my father, with his background of being in the military for 4 years and in technology, essentially radar technician and circuit boards and just electronics in general. Uh, when I was in my kind of my Kundalini awakening period, like prior to it, I was playing around with some stuff in my home lab with some vortex coils. There are these electrical coils, and I was running different frequencies and things like through it, and running these tests and things on it. And it's just an interest of mine, like kind of a hobby, and finding all these very strange anomalies. And I started asking him questions, about properties and things like that. Not ultra complicated stuff, like simple things that would be interrelated to electronics. And he didn't he didn't know about any of it. It was very bizarre. And I remember saying something to him. I said, "Well, I thought you had the training in the military." And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, I'm like, didn't really, pick up on a whole heck of a lot. And, I don't remember." And it was almost like there was like something in his mind that wouldn't let him remember any of it. Like he remembered some elements of him being in like Okinawa and in Vietnam, but the rest of it was completely like erased. Like they just erased his mind. And I had ran across some information about that, and I thought this is a high probability that they used him for experimenting, just at least seeing if he could if your mind is able to handle what they're throwing at you. And the guys that can't, they just get rid of them. Whenever you sign up for the military, they own you. And I got this information, and they were testing inmates, they were testing military people, anyone that they could get that had specific family bloodlines. Or you'll find this like people that get abducted, alien abductions, that they have specific blood typing. Usually it's the negatives. You'll see. Somebody had said to me years ago, they're like, "Hey, don't you guys have negative B in your blood? Don't go for a hike in the Appalachian forests." um, Stuff like that, just so it would come across, and it got me, thinking about it. And at any rate, whatever happened to him, it screwed him up in the head. Like he had a hard time keeping a job. Like I said, before he went in, he was like straight A student, really good at math and science. And when he got out, he was like not able to carry on. So he was bouncing around. He finally got into this is where the story gets into the economics and the stuff I talk about, and placing yourself and knowing how the kind of these world orders run things, and how you can put yourself into better positions so that you're not struggling in the future, depending upon what angle you go for your own, whether it's investing. Investing could be anything. It could be just, investing as an investor in money, or it could also be you investing your time as a career or whatever else. And if you would have known about these agreements behind the scenes, it would have gotten you to steer away from some of these things that would be potentially interrelated to this. So that's why I talk about that. I think it's important, like moving forward in the next, things are going to significantly change in the next 5 to 15 years. And a lot happens in that. So if you're starting a family, children having educations, things like that, it's like, where do they go? Like my generation, Gen Xers, it was all about computerization. Everything was computer science, computer science, computer science, a ton of it. So anyway, he gets out, and he ends up getting in the furniture industry, and worked his way up, and he ended up getting a job. This is around 1980. Gets a job as a marketing director of. He was VP marketing at this company called Sterlingworth, which headquarters was in this small little town that I grew up in Jamestown, New York, and that's where the furniture markets used to be. The furniture markets was like a main hub, like northeast hub of furniture was Jamestown, New York, and then the other one was High Point, North Carolina. So we lived in High Point, and then we moved up to Jamestown. We move up there. He had a job for about a year or two, and then he gets canned because the company was sold, and It was bankruptcy, or I think it was sold. And um, he was on the streets basically, like go find a job, go find something else to do. And it wasn't just Sterlingworth, there was a whole bunch of them. Like United States manufacturing was all pushing over to Asia. So the furniture industry took a huge hit. So we used to make everything in the United States. And just in that one sector alone, it took a huge, huge hit. And that the area that we were in, it basically turned it almost like a wasteland. It has some really nice kind of resort qualities because there's a lake and some recreational stuff that's there. It's really nice. But as far as the blue collar recreational stuff, it went in a toilet. The only thing left there is really like Cummins engine is there. Um, there's no reason. Plus, it's New York State. It's heavily regulated. Taxes are super high. There's no real reason to be there. So the area just went in the toilet. And so from like about when we moved there, 1980, until I graduated high school, it was like just a constant decline and struggling people everywhere. And the people that were successful, I went to a high school where a lot of the people that had businesses in the town, their children went to. I lived in a better area, like one of the best areas in the area, and it was good. Like we everybody got along fine, and we didn't have the level of like the job situation wasn't really hitting as hard that we would be able to see it. But when you drive through town, you could absolutely see it on stuff that was, run down, and, buildings that were vacant, and like these huge, huge brick buildings, these manufacturing buildings, like just vacant. We used to go and party in them and shit. It was fun. But just everything just went away. And that area, like it has an airport, and there used to be like flights and things that came into it. And I don't think they have uh, flights that are coming in and out of it anymore. My high school, my graduating class, 1993, we had 131 people, kids that graduated that year. And I went up a couple of years ago, and I've got some friends that are in the same at teachers at the same school, and now they have graduating classes of 75. So, so anyway, this is the decline. I'm talking about this. I've experienced how this affects areas based upon world trade. The reason why that area has gone in the toilet is because of these agreements and the world trade agreements. Because if the world trade agreements weren't in place, there'd be no incentive for the companies to go overseas because it wouldn't have been open for them to go do it. So as soon as they've opened up world trade and be like, well, why would I pay this person XYZ over here when I can have it done over there for this much? And it incentivizes them with taxation and so on and so on. But the governments are doing it. This is above the governments are opening up these free trade zones for these companies to move over there. And then what happens to the area? It's just left to the wayside. So you either wake the hell up and get out, or you pretend like you're going to fight the fight, just like what everybody else does. I mean, that's like a real common thing that happens. So yeah, my father ended up getting a job with Motorola. And he was like a salesman. He like sold radios and CBs and stuff like that, like just like door to door. That was a thing. And he had like businesses that would need walkie talkies, CBs, things like that, and that was his job. And it was enough, but it was like not it wasn't a very robust we lived better than a lot of other people did, but it was still like struggling, like there wasn't really things were dying. So it wasn't like, okay, I'm getting a new thing, I'm gonna, scale this and everything is gonna be great and I'm gonna move forward, and it's up and away. And it was the opposite. So everything that you would do would be like diminish, very, very, very slow, like death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? So it's like this diminishing economics in the area. And in high school, I mean, most everybody that I graduated with was leaving. I didn't have a college I was going to because I was just like barely barely finished school. But everybody was leaving. Everybody's like, I'm going to Kentucky, I'm going to go to Arizona, I'm going to go here to school. And just to get out of the area because it was just so dead. It was a dead area. So, it's gotten worse. And when I go back and I visit these people, they think that it's better, because they get an Applebee's on the corner, or there's a chain that comes in. Oh, we got a Panera Bread. Wow. I'm like one. um, that's a success to the area. And with me being in a larger metropolitan area and seeing how it really works, uh, I'm like, no, there's no interest here. Why would anyone run a business in this town? Because it's inside New York State. You have to follow all these rules, everything that's coming out of Manhattan. And this, by mind you, is like a 10-hour drive to New York City, dead east. So it's way on the tip. And there's nothing out there besides a bunch of trees, Amish, and cows, and now the furniture industry's pulled out of there. So once the industrialization pulled out of the area, and this is one town of many across, you've got that whole sector, they call it the Rust Belt, basically from about like Albany, Syracuse, all with New York State, Corning Glass, central part of New York State, down into Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Ohio, and all that manufacturing and everything has been significantly diminished. And it's people are just leaving in the droves. Like if you just look up these towns, like big cities like Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and see how many people are leaving the city. So it's not just California that they're getting out of. They're leaving these other areas in the Northeast, and part of it is because of this shift in industrialization and moving incentive. It's not like, well, the way that they sold this was that they're moving jobs overseas, that the companies were pulling out, and then we're gonna go offshore, and we're gonna have this stuff manufactured overseas, and blaming it on the companies. But no, that's not where it starts. It starts because there's a major organization that is above the United States government that sets up these agreements that says, okay, we need infrastructure set up in, say, Honduras or Peru or Argentina or Uruguay, whatever it is. And how do we get them to go down there? Because again, in a business, if you're making money in your business, you're not gonna do anything. There's no incentive. Like, I'm fine on taxation, but I could pay the taxes. I'll just raise the prices on the people. Da, 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 da. You don't really care where you're doing business. It's easy. But for the large corporations, uh, they're having these restrictions that are coming down on federal levels. Like I can think of one particular would be John Deere. That was a big one that's kind of been in the news over the past year. And John Deere tractors, and people don't know this. I hope I can get this guy on. A lot of people that have businesses, like I talk with people that are kind of on they I wouldn't say like the dark side of business, but they do things inside of business that is kind of like skirts this regulatory framework. All right. Like they're still doing things the old way because we have figured out a way to navigate around these regulations. Like, for example, like the emissions laws for diesels and things like that, like recoding computerizations and things like that in these computers that you have in machinery, cars, trucks, things like that. I've got a couple of people that I know that do it. It's a full-time business where they recode them and basically strip out uh, these regulatory compliance programs that are inside the vehicles computers, so that they run better, so they don't break. Like people don't understand, like the reason why all the shipping and everything is so expensive is because of all these regulations that have come in, and that they don't realize that an 18-wheeler is getting 5 miles a gallon in fuel. They don't understand that. They think it's like a freaking Prius driving around out there. Well, whenever they came out with these regulations, it decreased the fuel economy in the vehicles. So yeah, it doesn't throw a bunch of black soot and everything in the air, and but you're burning twice as much fuel. Near to it is twice as much fuel, and that causes shipping costs to go through the roof right there. And also the engines don't last. Easily get 1 million miles out of an engine on an 18-wheeler. And now you hit 100,000 miles and you've got every bell and whistle in the book that's going off on your dashboard because you've got all kinds of emission problems. And so the technology is not there yet. So, but what it does is it hurts small business because you have to absorb those costs. So there's people out there that are like, all right, well, what's the workaround? There's always a workaround. And the workaround is just turning it off, just shutting it off. There's like cut the regulations off. And it's I think they've actually rolled it back, but for about 10 years it was EPA was all over that. So that's another factor where it comes into this world trade and some of these rules and regulations that are coming either from the federal level or the multi-state national level, and it screws up business really bad. But yeah, back to John Deere. So if John Deere has to have all these tractors that are compliant, because originally whenever these compliances came out, it didn't have anything to do with off-road vehicles. So we were like switching out. They were putting the same emission standards for off-road vehicles, but it wasn't even in the books. The main equipment operating companies out there, manufacturers were already installing this. And we didn't understand why, because I'm like, it's not a rule. Like, let's just tear it out. Let's just tear this stuff out. So found somebody do it. And then we started to find out that behind the scenes that, yeah, they're just going to push manufacturing down to areas where they can sell their equipment because none of it lasts. It just breaks. And I was like, well, so you're going to have the John Deeres and the Caterpillars and all the other big companies are just going to be able to, instead of shipping all their farm equipment to Nebraska or Iowa in the United States, they'll just ship it down to Uruguay. Simple. Done. Because there's no regulations down there. So is John Deere going to lose any money? No. But what's going to happen to the manufacturing of those companies? Well, the more restrictions that you get, the people need to wake up to the fact of like, well, why is this happening? And then where is it funneling the energy? Think of it like as like a cloud of energy is money. It's stored energy. And the harder that governments make it for people to make money, at a certain point, the company just says, the hell with this. Is there a better place that we can go where we don't have to deal with all these problems? Be like, it isn't like out teching it, and getting more engineers to figure out a better way and how to fix this because we just don't have the technology right now. It's easier just if we just sell to another jurisdiction. If you sell anything as a business owner and as soon as you get paid on it and that's it, there's no more customer service. That's what you want. You want it off your books. So if I can go sell it down to some farmer in Uruguay and then just wash my hands of it and be done with it, be like, that's what they're going to do because it's easy business. So anyway, like with this Lima Peru agreement, like what my father experienced, like what I experienced in growing up in this area up north, is that as these restrictions and open door policies open up for easier businesses would be stupid not to move to those areas. And they could care less about the employees. That's the way big business works. If anybody's had a corporate job, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's 50 people in here and be like, oh, well, we lost XYZ contract. There's going to be layoffs. What? Be like, I just bought a house. So, but that's the realism of you don't want to be in that type of situation. That's why I never worked for anybody because I grew up in an area where it was pretty poverty stricken. So I thought, well, I can always do it on my own. I'll just be an entrepreneur and I'll just be a business owner because then it's all on my back. And I'm not going to take somebody, telling me one morning I go into work that you just lost your job because XYZ, because I experienced that because of my dad. So I'm like, I was never going to live like that. So that's what kind of empowered me to do it. But that's going to be happening in rapid succession more in the United States and all these areas because, there's going to be interests that are going to be pushed in other territories because it's just easier to do it. And as people lose this, and it also shrinks the U.S. economy, it de-dollarizes the U.S. economy and so on, that why be left holding the bag? So if you can kind of know in the future, like, okay, if my father would have known about the Lima Peru agreement and these declarations and what they were cooking up behind the scenes in free trade for China, then if he wouldn't have gotten into the furniture business, then our family might not have moved, XYZ. There's all these scenarios that you could be navigating around so that you don't have to deal with it. It's just again being educated on like what is the probability of XYZ. If you know the probability of how corporations work and their minds work and what their responsibility to shareholders is just to keep the wheels turning. So if they have an easier way to turn the wheels, they're gonna do it. So you can fight that all the hell you want, but at the end of the day, you're still gonna be in a soup line. So I was like, well, why do that? Why not just say, if we know that money is going to be moving to other jurisdictions, let's hedge our bets and not go all in on the United States, because it's like open season on these businesses in the United States, because they're not telling you not to do it, but they're opening up trade in these other areas that are going to be making it more advantageous for these major corporations to say, hey, let's go ahead and move our manufacturing to this place. And part of this is Mexico. Mexico is going to be a huge player in United States manufacturing, which is going to be, I think, the way this is playing out right now is Mexico is going to be the manufacturing hub for like industrial, like creation. So it's going to take away from China. It's going to go move to Mexico, and then you're going to have it's centralized in between. So this basically all Central America will be manufacturing. And so imagine like what's going on over like in Asia, like Vietnam, Thailand, where anything in Asia where we get anything from there, like textiles, whatever, autos, everything. That Mexico will be the new hub for industrialization, and then it will be able to feed North America and South America. Because if you look up, I'm going to look this up right now because it's America. What the definition of America? No. Okay. So I'm gonna share this. So if you say the word America is sometimes collectively the Americas or collectively America. So this is the okay. Uh this is where it's going. Now, how far out this is, it could be 100 years, but until it gets there where this is like basically running as one jurisdictional zone, this is where it's running towards. All right. And but before it gets to 100 years, like you come back and you reincarnate and it's, 100 years from now, that this would be the main trade zone. And we're starting to see that this, but it'd be better to be in it before it happens. That's how people get wealthy and have a good life. Just you become wealthy, generational wealth that you can move on to your family, but then be in an emerging market, but then have an understanding of what the end point is. Like, what is the trajectory? What are you guys working towards? And it all starts kind of making a little bit more sense when you look at it from this perspective. If you look at it out on a 50 or 100-year perspective, it starts making a little bit better sense. So if you look at the map, so the Americas, sometimes collectively called America, are a landmass comprising of North and South America viewed as a single continent. So again, whether this is a Mandela effect or they're changing the rule, whatever, they're changing the language, but think of it as a regional area. It'll go into, instead of nationalism, we go to regionalism. All right. So it would be advantageous for you to be buying and doing business of this in this zone if you lived in the zone. Right. So if you say like, oh, I really want to get the German car. Well, guess they're already manufacturing, already assembling, BMW in that area. They just don't want to have to ship it. It's the shipping that is the problem. So it looks like Central America is going to be, which makes sense, would be the industrialization. Instead of coming all the way over from China, we're just going to go ahead and ship it from Central America into the States, up in the US and to Canada. And then it can also feed South America, which is like the new breadbasket, right? And then it kind of creates a more cohesive trade zone instead of it just all over the place. I ordered something a couple of weeks ago, and it came from China. It came in like 3 days. That's nuts. And I was like, is that really that it's efficient. I appreciate that, but is that really a sustainable thing, moving forward? I'm like, is it possible that that same thing could be manufactured a little bit closer to home? Right. So it would be nicer to have it be in those zones. And then people are like, well, how the hell are they going to do Mexico? Because it's all full of narcos and all this other shit. And be like, exactly. Well, now, there really isn't a government that's running Mexico. It's all just independent drug cartels. So that'll be the next zone that the United States goes into. So instead, Middle East, the new one will be Central America, and they'll clean up the entire area that's already destabilized. That's why people are all getting out. So what happens before the military goes in is they incentivize and they get the people that want to get out. They let them get out, and then everybody else that stays behind, they're going to go in there, and it's open season. Not saying that they're going to go in there and kill all those civilians and everything else, but it ends up becoming, this is like rules of the game, that we're giving you a chance to get your ass out of here, because this isn't an environment that any sane person would try to raise a family and be successful. This is not, unless you're going to be running drugs or something. And they're not playing by the rules. These guys aren't paying taxes. They're not providing jobs. Some of the areas, I get it, that they're like, they're funding for like medical and things like that. They're kind of like the Al Capones of their areas. Sinaloa, that you've heard stories of them like taking care of towns and things like that. But what are they doing for like world trade? Like the cocaine industry's world trade, or heroin or whatever else. And be like, no, that's not going to work, guys. So I will, what's I think going to happen is you're going to see military action into Mexico, and you're going to see like a separation between the Mexican government and the drug cartels. Like they've already, declared them as terrorists. So all that has to happen is some kind of like catalyzing event that then enables, the United States government and Congress to just say, hey, we're going to go ahead and circumnavigate. We're not declaring war on Mexico, but we're going to go ahead and declare war on all these cartels, which is like most of Mexico. I have control over it if you've ever looked into it. And another thing to like kind of look at where this change is happening is down in, I'll just pull this up really quick. I've just been talking way too long. Maybe Franklin can break this video up. There's so many things that are all interconnected to this. So down in Michael Yan, he's a investigative reporter. He's got like a military background. He was on Sean Ryan show a ways back, and he was talking about, he was down in the Darien Gap, which is right in this zone. So this is Central America and South America. And I didn't know this, but there is no road that you cannot drive from South America into Central America. It's a no-go. I didn't know that. That was news to me. And I was like, that's interesting. So at any rate, yeah, it stops right here. The road stops in Panama. So they're building right now. Where is it? It's called Turbo. There's 3 bridges that they're building right now. I think it's right here. I think it's right here. But it's for world trade. Now, his angle on the Sean Ryan show, this Michael Young guy was talking about it as being like it's military, like, oh, these bridges are huge bridges and they can handle tanks and this and this and this. And the Chinese are investing in them. Like, they're just investing in it. It doesn't have anything to do with taking over territory. They're doing it because they're trying to open up trade, or they're going to. It's part of the whole initiative of open up trade. I think it's called Turbo. Maybe the town is so small I can't see it. They're opening up trade between South America and Central America, so they're able to have trucking, shipping, moving in between the two. All right. So 3 bridges, that's pretty major. But they always look at it like it's negative, like, oh my gosh, like the military is to go in and do XYZ. It's like the Roman legions for building all the roads and be like, oh yeah, there's all kinds of problems and stuff that happen in order to generate it and start it. But at the end of the day, what does it do? It opens up trade and gets people to be like, oh wow, I'd rather walk on a road and take my wagon and my horse on a road than have to walk in all this squalor and filth and everything else. So they don't even have a road. So investors are going in right now, and there's look up Turbo. I think it's Turbo. Oh, here's Turbo right here. So, oh, okay. So the bridge goes, maybe you can see it. Yeah. So that's Columbia, I believe. Yeah, like Turbo Columbia bridges. Let's see what comes up. I'm just gonna do it. Hell with it. Turbo Columbia bridges. Daring, yeah, we'll see what it says. Oh, bridges of the Columbia River, according to Wikipedia. Interstate I-5. Yeah. Is anticipated to begin in 2025, early 26. Project is estimated to cost between 5.5 billion. So interesting. The Columbia River Project. Oh, that's not the right one. That's Columbia. That's British Columbia. At any rate, he had been down there. Michael Yon had been down there, and he'd seen these bridges. They're under construction. All the immigrants, they're all just talking about immigrants flooding across the border and everything else, and how long it takes to get to the States and all this other business. So I'm going to do another video on the immigration and third-party deportations, and how the United States has turned into this kind of giant Ellis Island, if you will, and how we've been set up through for redistribution of these immigrants coming across the border, and how the United States gets paid through the International Bank of Settlements on administrating and taking registration fees for processing everybody that's coming across the border. So more to that. But anyway, that just kind of tells you a little backstory about my family being stuck inside of an environment, how these agreements affect any one certain area, and how people lose their jobs, and then it's not necessary. So there isn't any way to stop it, because there is such energy that is behind this, because they basically want to feed the world. They want to keep everything running and keep the lights on. And that's the main driver to the whole thing. And in it there's all kinds of profiteering that goes on behind the scenes, where it is a war machine. It is a industrialization machine. It's capitalism to the nth degree, for sure. No way getting around it. But that's the way progress runs. That's you're gonna get things happening faster, because you've got private money, NGOs, or the non-governmental organizations. Oh, they're always coming in and they're doing XYZ, and be like, well, they're the only ones. They're the ones that are paying for these projects. Be like, guys, don't you know that the United States was created on NGOs? Like, they were all profiteers. They weren't in it just for God and country, like all the bullshit that they tell everybody. So again, check out the Carolina Connection, and it kind of gives you some back history on the United States and how it was developed. But it's exactly the same way. There's none of this stuff has changed. They just keep rebranding it and just using different characters. So cheers.